It's quite appropriate that I do so today for many reasons. First of all, the theme of the conference is about sustainability, and it's perhaps the most compelling reason. Secondly, we are talking about sustainability against a backdrop of global uncertainty and perhaps unsustainability as well. But paradoxically, I'm also here to talk about the emerging market and the emerging economy, which has all the hallmarks of sustainability. So the emerging economy that I'm referring to is Sri Lanka, and I would like to share her economic success story today. As we know today, the world economy is not in good shape. We all know Europe is having its share of problems, in Africa, also in Asia. Economists are talking about stagnation and deflation, etc. But in all this doom and gloom, we still have economies that are emerging, which have a good upside to it, and that's something that I'm going to refer to you today. But before I plunge into some facts and figures, I don't have some exciting videos that like what we saw earlier on in the afternoon. But nevertheless, try to give you some information on this. Before I get into the facts and figures, I think it's also important that I analyze briefly what we mean about sustainability. When we talk about sustainability, we strive to establish economies that are economically viable, environmentally sound, and socially responsible. In order to achieve this, all sectors of the community must come together to determine the needs of the community and thereafter to identify and implement innovative and appropriate solutions. In particular, in today's context, the development of industry and technology takes center stage. However, given our limited resources that we have today and the rate at which we are swallowing up all these resources, it's difficult to subscribe to the view that sustainability of economies is possible. And the sustainability that we talk about, I believe, is with much flaws and inaccuracies and also rather impermanent in nature. Businesses depend on our ecosystems: fresh water, clean air, robust biodiversity, and productive land for the stability of our societies. Sadly, what we see today collectively, globally, we have not been making much progress on reducing the damage that businesses do to the world. The argument I'm putting forward is a fairly simple one. In fact, in a recent issue of the Harvard Business Review, this issue was analyzed fairly well. It is generally cheaper to buy the product that has a worst impact on its environment than the equivalent product that does less harm. Higher cost to the planet does not translate to higher price to the consumer. Of course, this is due to the fact that businesses are rarely obliged to pay for the full toll of their operations onto the world, because many of these impacts have been, of course, hard to gauge with any kind of precision or to assign to individual businesses with some degree of fairness. Their costs have remained external to business accounting. So when I'm talking about sustainable economies, there is a caveat. In the long run, sustainable and sustainability of economies is much a question. For example, what if all 1.3 billion people in China want to lead a rich and luxurious life just as much as those in the developing countries also want to acquire more wealth to lead a luxurious life? I doubt if our planet can afford all that. So then what is the sustainability that we speak about today? Is that the reason for the economic life cycles that we see today? For example, why emerging economies like Sri Lanka are thriving, and yet you have other economies who have done very well in the past or almost hibernating? So maybe we need a new world economic order in order to provide the kind of sustainability that we talk about. So I will try to articulate the sustainability that I'm speaking about through analysis of the Sri Lankan economy. For those who are not aware, Sri Lanka is located south of India in the Indian Ocean. It's an independent island a democracy which was formerly a British colony that get independence in 1948. In size, it's about 65,000 square kilometers with a population of 21 million people. It has a history and civilization dating back to over 2,500 years, and today is a tourist hotspot, especially a favorite among German tourists. It also has a reputation of being one of the most hospitable countries in the world. If I quote The Lonely Planet, it says endless beaches, timeless ruins, welcoming people, oodles of elephants, killer surf, cheap prices, fun trains, famous tea and flavorful food is perhaps the best way to describe Sri Lanka. A country which was at peace for centuries was cruelly struck by terrorism originating from the north of the country in 1983. This senseless civil war, which lasted 30 years and resulted in the meaningless destruction of life and property. At the time, the Sri Lankan armed forces were ill-equipped for this task, and terrorism, as we all know so well, took its human toll, and over 80,000 Sri Lankans are believed to have died through this conflict over this period. The government, however, which systematically upgraded its armed forces, was finally able to defeat the terrorists militarily in 2009 by eliminating the leadership. But I am here today not to talk so much about conflicts or a senseless war, but rather to talk about what happened thereafter. The period during the post-war, which I would like to call as the period of renaissance for the country. The details and statistics which I will reveal will show you that the post-war period that is today is a hotbed of development. And this development has come about through systemic and strategic planning implemented through clearly identified goals and achievement of those goals. That is why I would like to term this as a sustainable effort and a sustainable economy. Ladies and gentlemen, back in 2005, when the war was in full cry, the country's economic indicators were not showing good numbers. Economic indicators that were meant to be up were down, and economic indicators that were down were up. So in essence, we were a country in crisis, both from a political standpoint as well as from an economic standpoint. To its credit, the government pushed through its economic vision just as much as they pushed through the military machine to end the war. Just 9 years later, standing before you today, I can give you some surprising results about the country. Today, Sri Lanka is perhaps one of the safest countries to visit, quite unthinkable in 2005. And today one can visit any part of the country at any time, easily and safely. Today, economically, Sri Lanka has moved to a middle income emerging market status, graduating from the list of poverty reduction and growth trust eligible countries in which Sri Lanka was in 2005. IMF, which accords this classification, graduates a country from the poverty reduction growth trust to an emerging market middle income status if that particular country enjoys a per capita income well above the threshold, and if the country has the capacity for durable and substantial access to international financial markets, and the country does not face any serious short-term vulnerabilities. So today, ladies and gentlemen, the economic indicators in the country which need to go up have gone up, and those which need to come down have come down. Let me very briefly share with you some statistics. The real GDP growth up from 5% in 2000 to 7.8% in 2014. The GDP of the country from 16 billion US dollars has gone up to 77 billion US dollars in 2014. Unemployment from 7.6% in 2000 down to 4% in 2014. The current account deficit from 6.4% in 2000 down to 2.1% in 2014. If you talk about foreign remittances, we had 1.2 billion US dollars in 2000. Today, we have over 7 billion US dollars in 2014. Gross official reserves from 1.7 months of imports in 2000. Today we have 5.2 months of imports in 2014. The exchange rate has remained largely stable and in fact has substantially dropped its level of depreciation over the last 5 years. Budget deficit from 9.5% of GDP in 2000 is down to 5.2% of GDP in 2014. Public debt has come down from 96% of GDP in 2000 to 74% of GDP in 2014. Tourist arrivals, which was at 400,000 tourists in 2000, has increased to 1.5 million in 2014. So for the first time since gaining independence, Sri Lanka is now on a high growth, low inflation regime. It is noteworthy to mention that South Korea took 40 years after their war to achieve a $7,000 per capita income. In Sri Lanka, in all probability, they will reach it within 11 years. So as we can see, the country is moving from a high inflation to a low inflation, high interest rates to low interest rates, high fiscal deficits to low fiscal deficits, from low investor confidence to enhanced savings, sluggish investments to a pipeline of investments, low growth to sustained growth, and moving from high debt levels to low debt levels. So we are talking about the size of the economy that is projected to reach $100 billion by 2016 and $150 billion by 2020. In comparison, in 2005, the size of the economy was just $20 billion, which has now grown today in 2014 to $77 billion. Let me also very briefly elaborate on what these economic drivers are. In the agriculture sector, it's in agriculture, fishing, forestry, and livestock. In the industry sector, it is mining, apparel, electricity, gas, water, oil and gas exploration. Very recently, about 2 years back, they have discovered some large gas deposits around the beaches in the east area of Sri Lanka, and there's a lot of interest now in gas exploration. They're beginning to do the exploration next year. So that's one of the key sectors that are coming up. Technology and construction. In the services sector, it will be in trading, hotels, leisure, entertainment, insurance, healthcare, education services, banking, and transportation. Sri Lanka also has thus established some national mileposts for poverty, unemployment, malnutrition, electricity coverage, computer literacy, life expectancy, new highways, monorails, road network, and public investment. So how does Sri Lanka hope to achieve this economic momentum and sustainability? In order to achieve this growth trajectory, the government has put in place a unique strategy of the 5+1 hub concept. I'll just briefly explain this hub concept. There are 6 hubs that they have set up, which are already now in motion. We have an energy hub, a commercial hub, an aviation hub, a tourism hub, a knowledge hub, and a maritime hub. So in terms of energy, I spoke about oil exploration and production and development of renewable energy sources. Commercial as a commercial center for the growth of ports and tourism. Aviation, already a second international airport has been constructed. The existing airport has been modernized, and 11 domestic airports are being modernized. Tourism, the target is 4.5 million visitors by 2020. As I said, in 2005, there are 400,000 tourists, and in 2014, this increased to 1.5 million visitors as of October. So tourism earnings are expected to be over $6 billion by 2020. Then the knowledge hub talks about IT literacy and creation of knowledge-based jobs and promotion of research and innovation. The most interesting is the maritime hub. As you know, Sri Lanka is surrounded by sea from all sides and is a maritime haven and is the southernmost point of land in the Indian Ocean, located in a geographically vital point between the west and the east, and it nestles some of the major sea routes that pass that way. Taking advantage of this 4 major harbors are now being developed. In Colombo, a container mega hub. In the deep south, in Hambantota, a free port, service and industrial port. Another port in the south of Galle for leisure. In the east, a port-related port city, an industrial port city. And again in the east, another commercial and fisheries harbor, and 2 other regional ports in the north. Now, of course, there are many challenges that the country would have to face in achieving this goal of sustainable development. Firstly, the pace of development is not possible to achieve only through demand management policies. I am referring to fiscal policies, monetary policies, and exchange rate policies. Secondly, there is a need for strong macro fundamentals as well as structural reforms which increase productivity, competitiveness, and enhance confidence. As such, increasing productivity and competitiveness is arguably the key challenge for attaining the desired economic country mileposts that I talked about earlier. So when we talk about sustainable development, this is somewhat of an all-encompassing concept. If the issues of poverty and environmental degradation and the role of economic growth is not fully understood, then the policy responses may be inadequate and may result in contradictions. The urge is to take a strong stand on fundamental concerns and the need to get wide political acceptance. So a careful balancing act in this one is very necessary, as a sustainable development, particularly in a country like Sri Lanka, is like having one's cake and eating it too. So you need to balance the social and the economic benefits of both. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the fine line that Sri Lanka is now walking today. And if you ever have a chance to visit Sri Lanka, the changing skyline will bear the best proof of what I have been describing today. So the concept of sustainable economies have evolved today from its earlier thinking of talking about environmental and waste issues to cost management and innovation. Thereafter, it was on the impact of business on economies. But today, if you talk about sustainability of businesses, it's more fundamental. It's about how business is done, and I think that's the crux of it. But then that's another topic by itself, so today I will rest my case on what I have said. Ladies and gentlemen, I am humbled at the opportunity given to me by the Institute of Cultural Diplomacy in Berlin and consider it a singular honor to be part of the celebration of the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. This is not just an event for Germany, and I think it's being aptly commemorated at an international scale with so many people from diverse backgrounds. So I would like to place on record my sincere appreciation to Mr. Mark Donfried and his team for their hospitality, and to you, ladies and gentlemen, for giving me a very patient hearing at the end of the day, and allowing me to go through my rhetoric of 20 minutes. Thank you.